Hi, I'm Andre Stevens. I'm a principal engineer here at Rackspace. In this demo, we're going to go over how to create an unmanaged virtual machine. Let's get started. So you have your environment, and some of the general questions that we've been seeing a lot lately is, how do I modify the resources on my virtual machines? How do I connect to the console session? How do I create new virtual machines? How do I make this a highly available virtual machine? Let's answer all these questions right here, right now. I'm on a hypervisor, and as you can tell, it's running the minimal server interface. I did preload the failover cluster manager and Hyper-V manager snap-ins at the bottom of the screen. But let's say you log onto a hypervisor and you only have a command prompt window. The shortcut commands to get to your Hyper-V manager, it's virt ng mt.msc. And from there, as I said, let's go ahead and go back to the one that we've already loaded up. And one thing you'll see is that I have 4 VMs that are currently running. So some of the questions is, how do I modify the resources on my virtual machine? If you go to the settings of that VM, you'll notice that a lot of the settings cannot be modified because the virtual machine is currently running. So let's go ahead and shut down the VM so we can make some changes to this configuration. We'll start at the top. Let's say we need to go ahead and adjust the amount of memory. We're going to go ahead and give it, let's say, 8 gigs of memory. One thing to notice that your RAM is calculated in megabytes, so definitely do not try to just put in the number 8 for 8 gigs of RAM. Your VM will not be too happy with you. We're going to change and add another virtual processor. Let's say if we needed to go down and extend a disk. So when we have our disk that we want to extend selected, we can go to the Edit button, and you have some options, as in you can compact, convert, or expand the VM. And we're going to give it, let's say, 10 more gigs worth of disk space. And after we finish adding the disk space, one thing that you'll need to do on your operating system side is you'll need to extend your virtual disk itself. Just because we've extended it on the file system, well, on the server layer, does not mean that the file system is aware or is using that amount of disk space. So please extend that. Another option that we get asked a lot is, hey, I need to add another a network adapter to my server to have some more internal communication between my VMs. It's as simple as adding a new hardware and select the network adapter, choose your network, and assign a VLAN. We will typically provide the VLANs to you ahead of time, so use any of the VLANs that we've pre-assigned. In this case, I'll just hit OK, and I'm able to start the VM back up, and you'll notice that the assigned memory has changed from 4 gigs to 8 gigs. Now, some of the other questions that we've seen a lot is, I just made my standalone VM, but I want to make it a highly available standalone VM. So that's when we'll go back and we'll go to the failover cluster manager. The shortcut for that, it's just clue admin.msc. And what you'll notice in the failover cluster manager, a VM itself, it's actually considered a role. So as I said, let's still use demo 4 as our test subject. And we'll go down and configure a brand new role, and the role we'll select is virtual machine. And we'll select demo 4. When we get to the next section of the wizard, you'll see 2 warning messages, and that the Internet Explorer cannot be found or installed. That's only because we're in the server minimal interface. And we'll hit next, and we'll let it configure this highly available role, and it'll finish out the configuration. Now you'll notice that you'll have the same kind of options. You can go down and edit the settings of your virtual machine, but it will have to be off. Now, so going back to selecting the Hyper-V manager, you'll notice that I am no longer able to edit a lot of my settings, not just because the VM is powered on, but because the virtual machine is now clustered. So if you ever wanted to get to a point where you had a VM that you wanted to uncluster, in the failover cluster manager, you'll hit remove while selecting that virtual machine. and you'll notice that VM is still running. So all it does is it removes the ability for the failover cluster manager to facilitate that migration, that live migration of a VM to another eligible cluster role. And so we can go back and refresh our Hyper-V window to go back to the settings. And now you'll notice that it's just not allowing us to edit anything just because the virtual machine is powered on. Thank you for taking the time to watch the demo. For more information, go to rackspace.com/Microsoft.